Let's talk more women's basketball. Let's go up to Maryville for Northwest Missouri State. The women back in the NCAA tournament for the first time since 2011. To help break it all down is the voice of the Bearcat women's basketball team, Matt Tritten. Matt, thank you for the time today. And what a time it is for not just Bearcat women's basketball, but also the men. Both teams in the NCAA tournament, but the women making some history with head coach Austin Meyer in this program.
Well, Chris, I appreciate you having me on to talk a little Bearcat basketball with you. And you know what? Let me tell you, we've got Northwest Missouri State, Fort Hays, and Pittsburgh State, all three MIAA teams sending both the women and the men into the NCAA tournament. So I think that says a lot about what this conference does basketball-wise. And so hoping to see the MIAA continue on pretty deep. And, of course, we'd love to see that Bearcat pod go pretty far, too. But I feel like this has been a long time coming. Year 6 for Austin Meyer and the chance to be able to have that breakout kind of season. And for a couple of years, it kind of felt like Northwest Missouri State was on the cusp. You know, we'd go into some games getting ready for a broadcast, and you kind of feel like, man, this is a team that could kind of come out and compete with anybody. But they would have some games where you just lay an egg, and part of that growing process of the program. But, you know, this team this year has really come out and bucked the trend. They've got some really big wins, wins over Central Missouri and Fort Hays State, Nebraska Kearney for the first time in a long time. Of course, a couple against Missouri Western. Of course, we see the Griffins are the number 2 seed in the Central region for a reason. So that's kind of been that one thorn in Northwest Missouri State's side. But outside of that, the Bearcats have really played well throughout the year. It feels like they're peaking at the right time. And now, of course, trying to roll that into maybe a few NCAA tournament victories.
You talk about the last several years and, you know, what Coach Meyer and that program has been able to do since he took over back in the 2018-19 season. It was kind of starting from the bottom and rebuilding the entire thing. And like you said, there were a couple of years where they were close, but they couldn't close out those big games. What do you feel like the biggest difference is for this group now that maybe last couple of years where it's been close, but they'll drop these 1 or 2 possession games?
You know, part of it I think is the buy-in from the program because, you know, you had quite a few years where it was like, and the defensive side is still preached very heavily, but it's like, hey, we're going to go out and defend, but we're also going to be a little bit more methodical offensively and kind of work through things and eat up that entire 30-second shot clock and play low-scoring basketball games. This year, they picked up the pace a little bit. Coach Myers really bought into that. Chris Guest, the new assistant coach for the Bearcats, has also been a big proponent of, hey, let's kind of push and kind of see what we can do. And so offensively, that's been key. Despite pushing the pace a little bit and really working quite a few more subs packages to keep players fresh, defensively, they've still been very stingy, giving up just 59 points per game. It's one of the top defensive teams in the MIAA once again this season. And the other part is, too, the continuity within this team right now. It's virtually the same team that we saw last season. You know, a couple pieces here and there that are graduating and moving on, but for the most part, you're not seeing anybody transfer out. It's players sticking around for 4 years and playing it out at Northwest Missouri State. So the buy-in, they're getting experience. And there was a time last year where Northwest had 3 losses in a 4-game span that were by 3 points or less. Some tough losses to Nebraska, Kearney, Central Missouri, and Fort Hays. Those teams I mentioned a little bit earlier really kind of, again, turned the tide. They learned how to win those close games. They learned how to close some of those out, having different players step up and knock down a big shot when they need it most. You know, whether that's Molly Hartnett and Kaylee Keston, who are leading them in scoring. Lindsey Kelderman's knocked down some clutch shots. We even saw Lainey Joseph, a redshirt freshman that graduated from Cameron High School, step up and knock down some huge shots against Central Missouri whenever they got that win in Warrensburg. So it's been a complete team effort for this group to be able to come through and push through. And again, taking some excruciating losses from the past and learning to build from that.
What was your thoughts going into Sunday in the selection show? Because talking to Coach Meyer, Coach Guest, and the players, Saturday afternoon, even with the loss to Fort Hays, they felt pretty good, but then the GAC had everything happen with them where they had the 2 top seeds get upset. Coach Guest said he was spending all day Sunday writing scenarios out. A couple of different Twitter accounts had Northwest on the outside looking in. But what were your thoughts going into Sunday night's selection show? Because it wasn't going to be 5 MIAA teams getting in now.
You know, it's one of those things where as the night unfolded, I kind of kept talking myself into both scenarios. Well, Northwest Missouri State's deserving to be in for this. Well, I could see the committee going against Northwest Missouri State for this reason. I also kind of went through and like, well, Northwest and Missouri Southern are both really quality programs that have had great seasons. And the MIAA, probably more deserving than Harding to be in this tournament too. So, you know, it was one of those after the Northwest beat Nebraska Kearney on Thursday. I mean, I was jotting them down. I mean, they were one of the 8 guaranteed, and then things did flip in a hurry on Saturday. So I guess that's the beauty of how things were so unsure, is that you could tell as the team watched the selection show and had their watch party and actually got to just experience the emotions of it all, and not knowing, that made it a little bit sweeter, because you knew there was that chance that they weren't going to hear their name called.
When you look at what Coach Meyer and this program has been able to do, is it even more impressive considering, like you said, you've had Nebraska Kearney, you've had Central Missouri Hayes, all these teams that have made postseason runs until NCAA tournaments, Missouri Southern, Missouri Western, for them to break through into this upper echelon now, just to how tough it is in this league?
You know, that's one thing that going into this year, that you look up and down the roster, you watch them in practice, you talk to the players, and there's a good confidence with that group going in. That similar to the tournament and the committee, I'm sitting there kind of like, yeah, I think Northwest is going to be really good for these reasons. They could be a top 4 team in the league because of this. But then as the schedule starts to unfold and you kind of look at it and you look at that murderer's row that the Bearcats have to go through, uh, it's pretty easy to kind of talk yourself out of it too at times, because you know just how talented this conference is, and there are good coaches all over the place in the MIAA. So it's so difficult that for them to break through and get into the NCAA tournament, but even more so to get the 2 seed in the MIAA tournament. You know, you came down the stretch after a loss to Missouri Western, and you needed victories over Central Oklahoma and Missouri Southern to close things out, to lock up a good spot, to punch your ticket into March, essentially. That was huge, and it feels like they really are kind of coming around and playing some of their best basketball now at this point, to where it feels like they belong in the conversation with those teams that for so many years have been the upper tier of this league. And so 2011 was a long, long time ago, Chris. You were just a young man back then, and so to see Northwest Missouri State where they are right now, again, not in the Final Four like that 2011 team was, but they control their own destiny. They have the chance to get back into that. That's really special. And like we've seen on the men's side for so many years, if you can survive the Central region, you have a chance to go into the Elite 8 and do something pretty special.
Let's take a look at the first round matchup for Northwest. No stranger, Fort Hays State, the 3 seed. Basically, you have Missouri Western, Fort Hays, and Northwest all on one side of the bracket. So you have 3 MIAA teams on that side. Pittsburgh State's on the side with the GAC teams. Tough road for Northwest if they can get through Hays, and then if Missouri Western wins their game too, you have 2 MIAA games back-to-back there before you can even reach the Central Region Final.
Yeah, I mean, what a time to be a Pittsburgh State Gorilla, right?
Right, yeah.
Not have to go through and see the 3 teams on the other side. And you know, you really don't know how things will pan out. And you never know. Maybe Minnesota State comes out and plays well against Missouri Western. But I feel like at this point, you just kind of look at the Griffins' track record and you're like, all right, pencil them in for the semifinal. Fort Hays State made it into the MIAA tournament championship game. They've got the player of the year in Katie Wagner, who's one of the best players all time in Fort Hays State history, which is a very decorated program there. And you know, too, that there have been such great matchups through the years recently, Griffins and Tigers, that I think a lot of people are kind of thinking about what would a Central Region semifinal look like between Missouri Western and Fort Hays once again. But the Bearcats have beaten Fort Hays once this year. That was a 69-55 win in Maryville. They lost by 14 in Hays, but then you look at that game just last Saturday in the MIAA tournament semifinals, the Bearcats only lost by a score of 56-49. They were in it to the very end, defensively played really well, just a few turnovers at inopportune times, a couple times not getting a few shots to go down. But again, if they can play defense like that, it's all about finding ways to the free throw line and who's going to step up and be that X factor. You know, we look at that game that was played in Maryville. The Bearcats won by 14. You get 16 points out of Lainey Joseph coming off the bench. The Bearcats go 17 of 18 at the free throw line. We fast forward to Saturday's game in the MIAA tournament semifinals. Northwest only got to the free throw line a handful of times in that basketball game. And instead of it being a Bearcat role player stepping up and having that big game, it was Jesse Salek going 4 of 6 from three-point range, a season high in threes for Salek. And a forward that you'd kind of expect to do more damage in the paint was stepping out, knocking down those shots. And so it's going to be a chess match. How do Coach Meyer and Coach Cars for Fort Hays State kind of come out and handle these situations? But, you know, despite losing 2 of 3 so far this season to Fort Hays, I think the Bearcats feel pretty confident. They feel good about it. And again, at this point, you'd love to be seeing a team from the GAC or a team from the NSIC, but at the end of the day, you just want to be playing in March, and Northwest has that shot.
I was going to ask you the keys to the game, but you kind of went through them already. And Coach Meyer said there's not a lot of scouting left to do. I mean, this is the 4th time you played Fort Hays State this year. It's kind of one of those things you feel like they just got to go in, be loose, play their style, because there's no surprises really coming from Fort Hays State, and there's probably no surprises that Northwest will really throw at Fort Hays State either.
You know, I guess that's the one upside. Instead of like combing through hours and hours and hours of game tape, which they're still watching film anyway, you're not trying to prepare for someone that you haven't seen just yet and make sure that you kind of understand who are the shooters and who are the defenders, the drivers, and what to watch for there. I mean, so the teams know each other to the point to where you could probably just roll the ball out there and play this one right now at this point and just let them go. But it'll be fun to see the Bearcats and Tigers go back at it. You mentioned Northwest Missouri State playing loose. You go back to that first game of the MIAA tournament for Northwest, the 2 seed versus the 7 seed in Nebraska Kearney. And the higher seed's supposed to win that game, right? You kind of look at that that's the favored matchup. Again, it's a very good 7 seed in Nebraska Kearney. You talked to Coach Meyer before the game, and he's usually a loose guy and smiles and joking and having some fun. He seemed a little tighter for that interview than we'd had him his previous 5.5 years as a coach. But then you go down, you see the players warming up, you talk to them a little bit, and then you see the way the game starts. If there was any tension, it was with Coach Meyer, and the players just kind of rolled the ball out there and like, hey, let's go, let's play. And so the way Northwest shot the basketball, Kelsey Fields has been on fire for the last month. She has been huge. She'll be a huge factor for Northwest if the Bearcats can make a tournament run. But if they can establish that kind of mentality and be loose and play the way they did against Nebraska Kearney, the way they did to wrap up the regular season in Joplin against Missouri Southern, which was a huge, big victory to get their second win over the Lions in the regular season. They just look like such a different team than when this season started back in November, to where they're playing good basketball. Northwest went 6-0 in non-conference play, but they have just really taken a big step forward. And part of it's the game, what's happening on the floor. I think a lot of it is the mentality, too, that they know that they belong at this point.
Matt, last question before I let you get out of here. You talked about Coach Meyer, usually pretty loose, kind of cracking jokes and everything. To see what he's been able to do with this program, because he talked about it, coming in, he loved Maryville, wanted to stay at Northwest. He knew the undertaking this would be to get this program back up to the top of the MIAA. To see him have this success so far, what does that say for you, I guess, for being able to watch what he's been able to do with this program?
It's been exciting to watch what they've done, because it's a quality person that's leading the charge. He's trying to go about it the right way. Whenever he took the program over, he didn't come in and cut players or just try to kick players to the side. It was embracing the roster that was here, infusing some of his talent, and just trying to build from year one all the way up. And, one of the beauties of it, too, especially in just the current college athletics landscape, where it does kind of feel like it is a bit of a free-for-all, sometimes between coaches, players, trying to find a way to get playing time, whatever it is. I mean, obviously playing time is important, but now it's just everything feels a little bit different. We can get into that at a different time,
We
Chris.
can, yeah.
He's very upfront with his team, and he lays it all out there. Hey, you're going to get playing time for this reason, and this reason. You're not going to get playing time if this and this and this happen. And what's the energy and effort level in practice? How are you defending? Are you putting in extra time? So there are a lot of little factors like that. So the fact that he's forthright, he's a stand-up guy, he's a family man. I mean, he's raising his kids within this program and wants to make sure that, Mary Claire and Frankie are as much part of the team as the players want them to be, and they absolutely love them, and his wife Kelsey. And the fact that it's just high-quality people all around, it makes it easy to root for. And it's also a little bit more gut-wrenching when some of those losses come around, too. But that's kind of the beauty of sport, and that's why we get into it, too.
Bearcats start NCAA Division II Central Region play on Friday at noon down at Bethany,
Chris,
Oklahoma.
real quick.
Yeah, go ahead.
Is that a green shirt? Are you wearing a green shirt for the Bearcats and the gold tie for Western, or are we going all Western colors right now?
Well, this was silver, and the only tie I had really to match it was this yellow tie.
Interesting. All right.
I'm not very fashionable. I'm
Okay.
sorry. Yeah. Well, if you would,
All right.
if you would give me some of the wardrobe you wore when you worked here. Well, actually, you
Go in my
did.
closet, it
You
hasn't
gave me
changed.
some of the polos. I still have a couple.
Some of the what?
Polos. You remember those?
Oh, okay,
Yeah,
yeah.
polos. Yeah, you gave me a
I
few of
kept
those.
one.
Yeah, and you gave me the rest. I think I've kept some of them. Some of them I don't wear anymore. But off topic.
This is the content your viewers want.
I know.
I appreciate you having me on.
We should talk more about our clothes later on as well. Matt, 12 o'clock on Friday, Bearcats and Fort Hays State. Where can they catch the game on the Bearcat Radio Network?
Catch it on the flagship station, KXCV Maryville. That's 90.5 on the FM dial, or on the Bearcat Public Media app. We stream every game there, too.
Pre-game 11:30?
Pre-game at 11:30, that's right.
All right. Thank you, Matt.
Thanks, Chris.